The Path of the Wandering Blade. Chapter 1. The Forgotten Disciple. In the misty mountains of Yurisan, where ancient pines whispered secrets of the past, a young man named Kim Sung-min trudged along a winding path. His clothes were tattered, his face gaunt from hunger, but his eyes burned with an inextinguishable fire. Sung-min was the last disciple of the once great Falling Leaf Sect, a martial arts school that had been wiped out in a night of treachery and bloodshed. For 3 years, Sung-min had wandered the wilderness, honing his skills in solitude and searching for a purpose. The weight of his sect's legacy hung heavy on his shoulders, along with the bitter knowledge that he had been too weak to save them. Now, at the age of 20, he was returning to the world of men, driven by a desire for answers and a thirst for vengeance. As he descended from the mountains, the mist parted to reveal a small town nestled in the valley below. Wagakri, a place where merchants and travelers often stopped to rest before continuing their journeys. Sung-min's stomach growled at the thought of a warm meal, something he hadn't enjoyed in months. Entering the town, he drew curious glances from the locals. His wild appearance and the sword at his hip marked him as an outsider, possibly a dangerous one. Sung-min ignored their stares, making his way to a modest inn at the center of town. The innkeeper, a portly man with a jovial face, greeted him warily. "Welcome, young master. What brings you to our humble town?" Sung-min placed a small pouch of silver on the counter. "A room for the night and a hot meal, if you please." The innkeeper's demeanor softened at the sight of money. Of course. Please make yourself comfortable. I'll have our best room prepared for you." As Sung-min sat down to his first proper meal in ages, he overheard snippets of conversation from nearby patrons. "Did you hear? The Phoenix Pavilion is holding a martial arts tournament in the capital next month. Ah, those arrogant bastards, always flaunting their wealth and power. But I heard the prize is incredible this year. The winner will receive a rare martial arts manual and a position as an elder in the pavilion." Sung-min's chopsticks paused halfway to his mouth. The Phoenix Pavilion. That name stirred something in his memory. Hadn't they been allies of the Falling Leaf Sect once? Perhaps this tournament could provide the answers he sought. As he mulled over this new information, the inn's door burst open. A group of rough-looking men swaggered in, led by a hulking brute with a nasty scar across his face. Well, the scarred man bellowed. "Looks like business is good, old man. Time to pay up your protection fee." The innkeeper's face paled. "But Master Choi, I just paid last week." "Surely, prices have gone up?" Choi sneered, slamming his fist on a nearby table. "Pay up, or we'll burn this place to the ground." Sung-min's eyes narrowed. He had seen enough injustice in his young life to last several lifetimes. Without a word, he stood and approached the group. "I suggest you leave," he said quietly. "This man has done nothing to deserve your harassment." Choi turned, sizing up the newcomer with a mixture of amusement and contempt. "Look here, boys. We've got ourselves a hero." He cracked his knuckles menacingly. "Run along, kid, before you get hurt." Sung-min didn't move. "I won't ask again." With a roar, Choi lunged forward, his meaty fist aiming for Sung-min's face. But the young martial artist was no longer there. In a fluid motion that seemed to defy physics, Sung-min sidestepped the attack and struck Choi's elbow with the edge of his hand. There was a sickening crack, and Choi howled in pain, his arm hanging uselessly at his side. His men, momentarily stunned by the display, quickly drew their weapons. "Kill him!" Choi screamed, cradling his broken arm. What followed was a whirlwind of motion. Sung-min moved like water, flowing between his attackers with grace and precision. His hands and feet struck with devastating accuracy, targeting vital points and weak spots. Within moments, the floor was littered with groaning bodies. Choi, realizing he was outmatched, turned to flee. But Sung-min was faster. In 2 quick strides, he caught up to the thug and delivered a palm strike to his back. Choi collapsed, gasping for air. The inn had fallen silent, all eyes fixed on the young man who had single-handedly defeated a gang of thugs. Sungmin calmly returned to his seat and resumed eating as if nothing had happened. The innkeeper approached cautiously. "Thank you, young master. You've saved us from those criminals. Please, your stay and meals are on the house." Sungmin nodded in acknowledgement. "Can you tell me more about this tournament in the capital?" As the innkeeper eagerly shared what he knew, Sungmin's mind raced with possibilities. The Phoenix Pavilion was one of the most powerful sects in the martial world. If anyone had information about the fall of the Falling Leaf Sect, it would be them. His path was clear. He would enter the tournament, win the prize, and use his position to uncover the truth about his sect's destruction. And if the Phoenix Pavilion was involved in that tragedy, well, he would cross that bridge when he came to it. As night fell over Wagakri, Sungmin retired to his room, his heart filled with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. Tomorrow he would begin his journey to the capital, and with it, the next chapter of his life. Little did he know that his actions in the inn had not gone unnoticed. In the shadows outside, a figure watched with keen interest before disappearing into the night. The wheels of fate had begun to turn, and Sungmin's destiny was about to unfold in ways he could never have imagined. Chapter 2. The Road to the Capital. Dawn broke over Wagakri, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. Sungmin rose early, his body accustomed to the rigorous training schedule he had maintained even during his years of wandering. After a quick breakfast and a heartfelt farewell to the grateful innkeeper, he set out on the road to the capital. The journey would take several days, giving Sungmin time to reflect on his past and prepare for the challenges ahead. As he walked, he began to cycle through the forms of the Falling Leaf Sect's secret techniques. The Autumn Wind sword style was a complex and beautiful art, emphasizing fluidity and adaptability. Like a falling leaf carried by the breeze, a practitioner of this style could turn an opponent's strength against them, using minimal force to achieve maximum effect. Sungmin's movements were graceful yet powerful, his sword cutting through the morning air with barely a whisper. To an observer, it might have looked like an elaborate dance, but each step and swing was honed to lethal perfection. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Sungmin's practice was interrupted by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. He quickly sheathed his sword and stepped to the side of the road as a group of riders came into view. At the head of the procession was a young woman, perhaps a year or two younger than Sungmin. She sat tall in the saddle, her bearing regal and confident. Behind her rode several armed guards, their uniforms marking them as retainers of a noble house. As they drew near, the young woman's eyes met Sungmin's. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. There was something in her gaze, a mixture of curiosity and recognition, that caught Sungmin off guard. But before he could ponder it further, the moment passed, and the riders continued on their way. Sungmin watched them disappear down the road, a strange feeling settling in his chest. He shook his head, dismissing the encounter as a random occurrence, and continued on his journey. As the day wore on, the road became busier with travelers heading to the capital. Merchants with laden carts, pilgrims on their way to famous temples, and the occasional group of martial artists all shared the dusty path. Sungmin kept to himself, but he couldn't help overhearing snippets of conversation about the upcoming tournament. "I heard the Phoenix Pavilion has invited masters from all over the country. Do you think the Iron Fist sect will participate this year? They say the prize manual contains techniques that can extend one's lifespan by decades." The excitement in the air was palpable, and Sungmin found himself caught up in it despite his reservations. He had entered tournaments before during his training with the Falling Leaf Sect, but never one of this scale. The competition would be fierce, and he knew he would need every ounce of skill and cunning to succeed. As evening approached, Sungmin decided to make camp for the night. He found a secluded spot near a small stream, away from the main road. After a simple meal of dried meat and wild berries, he settled into a meditative posture to cultivate his internal energy. The Falling Leaf Sect's internal cultivation technique, known as the cycle of seasons, was a closely guarded secret. It allowed practitioners to harmonize their qi with the natural rhythms of the world, enhancing their physical abilities and extending their lifespan. Sung Min had barely scratched the surface of this profound art, but even his limited mastery gave him an edge over many of his peers. As he sat in quiet meditation, the sounds of the forest faded away, replaced by the subtle ebb and flow of energy within his body. Sung Min could feel the qi circulating through his meridians, nourishing his organs and strengthening his muscles. With each breath, he drew in the essence of the world around him, purifying and refining it within his dantian. Hours passed, and the moon rose high in the sky before Sung Min opened his eyes. He felt refreshed and energized, ready to face whatever challenges the new day might bring. But as he prepared to sleep, a twig snapped in the darkness beyond his campsite. Sung Min was instantly alert, his hand moving to the hilt of his sword. He extended his senses, trying to detect any hostile presence. "You can relax," a voice called out from the shadows. "I mean you no harm." A figure stepped into the moonlight, revealing an old man with a long white beard and twinkling eyes. He leaned on a gnarled walking stick, but Sung Min could sense the power hidden beneath the man's frail appearance. "Who are you?" Sung Min demanded, not lowering his guard. The old man chuckled. "Just a fellow traveler, young man. I couldn't help but notice your sword technique earlier. You wouldn't happen to be from the Falling Leaf Sect, would you?" Sung Min's eyes widened in surprise. "How do you know about the Falling Leaf Sect?" "Oh, I've been around for a long time," the old man said with a wink. "I've seen many sects rise and fall. The Falling Leaf Sect was once a force to be reckoned with, but I heard they were wiped out a few years ago. It's a pleasant surprise to find a survivor." Sung Min's grip on his sword tightened. "What do you want?" The old man raised his hands in a placating gesture. "As I said, I mean you no harm. In fact, I might be able to help you. You're heading to the Phoenix Pavilion's tournament, aren't you?" Sung Min nodded cautiously. "I thought so," the old man said, stroking his beard. "Listen carefully, young man. The Phoenix Pavilion is not what it seems. There are dark secrets hidden behind its glorious facade. If you truly wish to uncover the truth about your sect's destruction, you'll need to tread carefully." "What do you know about it?" Sung Min asked, his curiosity overcoming his suspicion. The old man's expression turned grave. "I know that the night your sect fell, there were more players involved than just the obvious attackers. The Phoenix Pavilion may have had a hand in it, but they were not alone. Be wary of alliances and betrayals, young Kim Sung Min. Not everything is as it appears in the martial world." Sung Min was stunned. Not only did this mysterious old man know about the Falling Leaf Sect, but he also knew Sung Min's name. "Who are you really?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The old man smiled enigmatically. "Let's just say I'm an interested party. I've watched you from afar, Sung Min, and I believe you have a greater role to play in the coming events. But for now, I've said too much. Remember my words, and trust your instincts. We'll meet again when the time is right." Before Sung Min could respond, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, stirring up a cloud of leaves. When it settled, the old man was gone, leaving no trace of his presence. Sung Min stood frozen, his mind reeling from the encounter. The old man's words had shaken him to his core, raising more questions than answers. As he finally lay down to sleep, his dreams were filled with swirling leaves and shadowy figures, hinting at the complex web of intrigue he was about to enter. The next morning, Sung Min resumed his journey with renewed determination. The capital loomed on the horizon, a sprawling city of grand palaces and bustling markets. As he approached the massive gates, he took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The tournament was still a week away, but already the city was alive with excitement. Martial artists from all over the country had gathered, each hoping to prove their worth and claim the Phoenix Pavilion's prize. Sung Min knew he would need all his skill and cunning to navigate this treacherous landscape. As he stepped through the gates, blending into the crowd of hopeful contenders, Sung Min couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Somewhere in this vast city, forces were moving behind the scenes, and he was about to be caught in the middle of a storm that had been brewing for years. The path of the wandering blade had led him here, to the heart of the martial world. Now it was time to unsheath his sword and carve out his own destiny. Chapter 3: Shadows in the Capital. The capital of Hanyang was a city of contrasts. Grand palaces and ornate temples stood side by side with crowded markets and narrow alleyways. The air was thick with the scent of incense, spices, and the ever-present undercurrent of intrigue that seemed to permeate every corner of the martial world. Sung-min made his way through the bustling streets, his senses on high alert. The old man's warning echoed in his mind, making him wary of every passing face. He needed a place to stay and gather information before the tournament began. As he wandered through the lower districts, a commotion caught his attention. A crowd had gathered around two men locked in heated argument. One, a burly merchant with an expensive-looking robe, was red-faced with anger. The other, a thin young man in simple clothes, stood his ground defiantly. "You cheating dog!" the merchant bellowed. "I'll teach you to try and swindle me." The young man raised his hands placatingly. "Please, sir, I assure you there's been no cheating. The jade is genuine. I swear it on my life." The merchant's hand went to the sword at his hip. "Then you won't mind if I take your life as payment." Before the situation could escalate further, Sung-min stepped forward. "Gentlemen, surely there's a way to resolve this without violence?" Both men turned to look at him, surprised by the interruption. The merchant sneered. "This is none of your business, boy. Walk away if you know what's good for you." Sung-min stood his ground. "I'm something of an expert in jade. Perhaps I could examine the piece in question and settle this dispute." The young man eagerly held out a small, intricately carved jade pendant. "Please take a look. I stake my reputation on its authenticity." Sung-min took the pendant, turning it over in his hands. He may not have been an expert in jade, but years of training had honed his senses to detect even the slightest imperfections. After a moment, he nodded. "This jade is indeed genuine," he declared, "and of accept." Chapter 4: The Gathering Storm. The merchant's face twisted in frustration, but he could not refute Sung-min's calm assertion. With a huff, he turned on his heel and stormed off, muttering curses under his breath. The young man let out a sigh of relief and bowed deeply to Sung-min. "Thank you, sir. I don't know what I would have done without your help." Sung-min waved off the gratitude. "Think nothing of it. Just be careful who you do business with in the future." The young man straightened and introduced himself. "My name is Lee Jin-ho. I'm a trader from a small village to the north. If there's anything I can do to repay you, please let me know." Sung-min considered for a moment. "Actually, there is something. I'm new to the capital and could use some guidance. Do you know of a place where I can stay and gather information about the upcoming tournament?" Jin-ho's face lit up. "You're in luck. My uncle runs a small inn not far from here. It's a popular spot for martial artists and travelers. I'm sure he would welcome you." Grateful for the lead, Sung-min followed Jin-ho through the winding streets to a modest inn tucked away in a quieter part of the city. The sign above the door read, "The Jade Dragon Inn," and the warm glow of lanterns spilled out onto the cobblestone street. Inside, the inn was bustling with activity. Patrons of all kinds filled the common room, exchanging stories and laughter over steaming bowls of food and cups of tea. Jin-ho led Sung-min to the counter, where a middle-aged man with a kind face and a neatly trimmed beard greeted them. "Uncle, this is Kim Sung-min. He helped me out of a tight spot earlier. Do you have a room available for him?" The innkeeper's eyes twinkled with gratitude. "Any friend of Jin-ho's is welcome here. We have a room on the second floor that should suit you well. Please, make yourself at home." Sung-min thanked the innkeeper and settled into his room, grateful for the comfortable bed and the sense of security the inn provided. As he unpacked his few belongings, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The capital was a place of opportunity, but also of danger. He would need to stay vigilant. That evening, Sung-min joined the other patrons in the common room, hoping to pick up useful information. The atmosphere was lively, with people from all walks of life sharing tales of their travels and exploits. Sung-min listened intently, his ears tuned for any mention of the Phoenix Pavilion or the tournament. As the night wore on, a group of martial artists entered the inn, their presence commanding attention. They wore matching uniforms emblazoned with the emblem of a soaring phoenix, marking them as members of the Phoenix Pavilion. Sungmin's interest was piqued, and he watched as they took a table near the center of the room. The leader of the group, a tall man with a stern expression and a scar running down his cheek, began speaking in a low voice to his companions. Sungmin strained to hear their conversation over the din of the room. "Tournament is just a formality," the leader was saying. "The elders have already decided who will win. Our job is to make sure no one disrupts their plans." One of the other martial artists, a young woman with sharp eyes, nodded. "What about the outsiders? There are bound to be some strong contenders." The leader's expression darkened. "We'll deal with them as necessary. The Phoenix Pavilion cannot afford any surprises." Sungmin's heart sank. The tournament was rigged, and the Phoenix Pavilion was pulling the strings. His hopes of using the tournament to uncover the truth about his sect's destruction seemed more distant than ever. Determined to learn more, Sungmin approached the table, bowing respectfully. "Excuse me, honored warriors. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. I'm a martial artist myself, and I was hoping to participate in the tournament. Do you have any advice for a newcomer?" The leader's eyes narrowed, but he masked his suspicion with a polite smile. "The tournament is open to all who wish to test their skills. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart. Only the strongest will prevail." Sungmin nodded, his expression earnest. "Thank you for the advice. I will do my best." As he returned to his seat, Sungmin's mind raced. The Phoenix Pavilion's influence was greater than he had anticipated, and he would need to be cautious. But he couldn't give up now. The truth was within reach, and he was determined to uncover it, no matter the cost. Chapter 5: Allies and Enemies. The days leading up to the tournament were a whirlwind of activity. Martial artists from all over the country filled the capital, each eager to prove their worth. Sungmin spent his time training and gathering information, his senses always on high alert. One evening, as he practiced in a secluded courtyard, he was approached by a familiar figure. The young woman he had seen leading the group of riders on his way to the capital stood before him, her expression curious. "Your movements are impressive," she said, her voice carrying a hint of admiration. "You must be a skilled martial artist." Sungmin bowed respectfully. "Thank you, miss. I am Kim Sungmin. May I know your name?" The young woman smiled. "I am Lady Han Soo-jin, daughter of General Han. I couldn't help but notice your technique. It is unlike any I have seen before." Sungmin's heart skipped a beat. General Han was a renowned figure in the martial world, known for his strategic brilliance and formidable combat skills. To have his daughter take an interest in him was both an honor and a potential complication. "It is the autumn wind sword style, a technique of the Falling Leaf Sect," Sungmin explained. "I am its last disciple." Soo-jin's eyes widened in recognition. "The Falling Leaf Sect? I heard they were destroyed years ago. How did you survive?" Sungmin's expression darkened. "I was away on a training mission when it happened. By the time I returned, it was too late." Soo-jin's gaze softened with sympathy. "I am sorry for your loss. If there is anything I can do to help, please let me know." Sungmin hesitated, then decided to take a chance. "Actually, there is something. I have reason to believe that the Phoenix Pavilion was involved in the destruction of my sect. I came to the capital to participate in the tournament and uncover the truth. But I have learned that the tournament may be rigged." Soo-jin's expression turned serious. "The Phoenix Pavilion is powerful, but they are not invincible. If what you say is true, then they must be held accountable. I will speak to my father about this. Perhaps he can offer his assistance." Grateful for her support, Sungmin thanked Soo-jin and watched as she left the courtyard. He felt a glimmer of hope. With allies like Soo-jin and her father, he might stand a chance against the Phoenix Pavilion. As the tournament drew closer, Sungmin continued to train and gather information. He learned that the tournament would be held in the grand arena of the Phoenix Pavilion, a massive structure capable of holding thousands of spectators. The competition would be fierce, with martial artists of all styles and backgrounds vying for the coveted prize. On the eve of the tournament, Sung-min received a message from Soo-jin, requesting a meeting at a secluded garden within the palace grounds. Curious and cautious, he made his way to the appointed place. Soo-jin was waiting for him, her expression serious. "I spoke to my father. He is willing to help, but we must proceed carefully. The Phoenix Pavilion has eyes and ears everywhere." Sung-min nodded. "What do you suggest?" Soo-jin handed him a small, intricately carved jade pendant. "This is a token of my family's support. Wear it during the tournament. It will mark you as an ally of the Han family. My father has also arranged for some of his trusted men to keep an eye on the proceedings. If anything goes wrong, they will intervene." Sung-min accepted the pendant with gratitude. "Thank you, Lady Soo-jin. Your support means more than you know." Soo-jin smiled. "We are in this together, Sung-min. The truth must come to light, no matter the cost." As Sung-min returned to the Jade Dragon Inn, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The tournament was about to begin, and with it, the next stage of his journey. He had allies now and a plan to uncover the truth. But he knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger. The morning of the tournament dawned bright and clear. Sung-min joined the throngs of martial artists making their way to the grand arena. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the buzz of excitement and the tension of impending conflict. As he entered the arena, Sung-min felt a surge of determination. He had come this far, and he would not be deterred. The truth about the Falling Leaf Sect's destruction was within his grasp, and he would stop at nothing to uncover it. The path of the Wandering Blade had led him to this moment. Now it was time to face his destiny. Chapter 6. The tournament begins. The grand arena of the Phoenix Pavilion was a sight to behold. Towering stands filled with spectators surrounded a massive central stage, where the martial artists would compete. Banners bearing the emblem of the Phoenix Pavilion fluttered in the breeze, adding to the sense of grandeur and anticipation. Sung-min took his place among the other contestants, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nerves. He wore the jade pendant given to him by Soo-jin, a symbol of the Han family's support. It felt like a small but significant shield against the uncertainty that lay ahead. The tournament began with a series of preliminary matches, designed to whittle down the large number of contestants to a more manageable number. Sung-min watched as martial artists of all styles and backgrounds displayed their skills, each hoping to advance to the next round. When it was his turn to compete, Sung-min stepped onto the stage with a sense of purpose. His first opponent was a burly man with a heavy broadsword, his movements powerful but lacking finesse. Sung-min's autumn wind sword style proved to be the perfect counter, allowing him to evade the man's attacks and strike with precision. Within moments, the match was over, and Sung-min was declared the winner. As the day wore on, Sung-min continued to advance through the tournament, each victory bringing him one step closer to his goal. He faced opponents of varying skill levels, some challenging, others less so. But with each match, he felt his confidence grow. Between matches, Sung-min kept a close eye on the other contestants, particularly those from the Phoenix Pavilion. He noticed that they seemed to have an air of arrogance, as if they were certain of their victory. It only strengthened his resolve to uncover the truth. In the stands, Soo-jin and her father's men watched the proceedings closely, ready to intervene if necessary. Sung-min took comfort in their presence, knowing he was not alone in his quest. As the tournament progressed, the matches became more intense. Sung-min found himself facing increasingly skilled opponents, each pushing him to his limits. But he drew strength from his training and the memory of his fallen sect, using every ounce of his skill and determination to prevail. Finally, the day came when Sung-min stood on the stage for the semifinals. His opponent was a young man with a lithe build and a pair of short swords. His movements were quick and precise, a stark contrast to the brute strength of some of Sung-min's earlier opponents. The match began with a flurry of attacks, both fighters moving with lightning speed. Sungmin's autumn wind sword style allowed him to flow around his opponent's strikes, but the young man's agility and dual-wielding technique kept him on his toes. The crowd watched in rapt attention as the two martial artists clashed, their swords ringing out in a symphony of steel. Sungmin could feel the strain of the battle, but he refused to give in. He focused on his opponent's rhythm, looking for an opening. In a moment of clarity, Sungmin saw his chance. He feinted to the left, drawing his opponent's guard, then pivoted and struck with a powerful upward slash. The young man tried to parry, but he was a fraction too slow. Sungmin's sword connected with his shoulder, sending him sprawling to the ground. The crowd erupted in cheers as Sungmin was declared the winner. He helped his opponent to his feet, exchanging respectful bows before leaving the stage. As he returned to the waiting area, Sungmin couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. He was one step away from the finals, and the truth he sought was within reach. But as he prepared for the final match, a shadow fell over the arena. The leader of the Phoenix Pavilion's martial artists, the stern man with the scar, stepped onto the stage. His presence commanded attention, and the crowd fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying across the arena, "we have reached the final stage of the tournament. But before we proceed, I have an important announcement." Sungmin's heart raced as he listened, sensing that something was amiss. "The Phoenix Pavilion has decided to introduce a special challenge for the final match," the leader continued. "The remaining contestants will face not only each other, but also a series of trials designed to test their true strength and character. Only the one who passes all the trials will be declared the winner." A murmur of surprise and confusion rippled through the crowd. Sungmin exchanged a worried glance with Soo-jin in the stands. This unexpected twist could complicate his plans. The leader's gaze settled on Sungmin, his eyes cold and calculating. "Kim Sungmin, step forward." Sungmin took a deep breath and walked onto the stage, his mind racing with possibilities. He could feel the weight of the jade pendant against his chest, a reminder of the Han family's support. "The first trial," the leader announced, "is a test of endurance. You will face a series of opponents, one after another, without rest. Only if you defeat them all will you advance to the next trial." Sungmin nodded, his resolve unshaken. He had come too far to back down now. The first opponent stepped onto the stage, a burly man with a massive axe. Sungmin readied his sword, his mind focused and clear. The match began, and Sungmin moved with the grace and precision of the autumn wind sword style. He evaded the man's powerful strikes, countering with quick, decisive blows. Within moments, the burly man was defeated. But there was no time to rest. The next opponent stepped forward, and the cycle continued. Sungmin faced a series of martial artists, each testing his endurance and skill. He could feel the strain on his body, but he refused to give in. As the final opponent fell, Sungmin stood panting, his body aching but his spirit unbroken. The crowd erupted in applause, but the leader of the Phoenix Pavilion remained impassive. "Well done, Kim Sungmin," he said. "You have passed the first trial. Now, for the second trial, a test of wisdom." Sungmin's mind raced as he prepared for the next challenge. He had come this far, and he would not be deterred. The truth about the Falling Leaf Sect was within his grasp, and he would stop at nothing to uncover it. The path of the wandering blade had led him to this moment. Now it was time to face his destiny. Chapter 7: The Trials of Wisdom and Courage. The leader of the Phoenix Pavilion gestured to a table that had been set up at the edge of the stage. On it lay a series of objects: a scroll, a small wooden box, a bowl of water, and a single candle. Sungmin approached the table, his mind focused on the task at hand. "The second trial," the leader announced, "is a test of wisdom. Before you are 4 objects, each representing a different aspect of the martial path. You must choose the one that best embodies the true essence of a martial artist." Sungmin studied the objects carefully. The scroll likely contained knowledge and techniques. The wooden box could symbolize hidden potential, The bowl of water represented adaptability, and the candle stood for inner strength and enlightenment. He closed his eyes, letting his instincts guide him. The teachings of the Falling Leaf Sect emphasized harmony with nature and the flow of energy. With that in mind, he reached out and picked up the bowl of water. The leader's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. "You have chosen wisely. The essence of a martial artist lies in their ability to adapt and flow like water, bending but never breaking. You have passed the second trial." Sung-min felt a surge of relief, but he knew the hardest part was yet to come. The final trial would test his courage and resolve, and he had no idea what to expect. The third and final trial, the leader announced, is a test of courage. You will face a formidable opponent, one who embodies the spirit of the Phoenix Pavilion. Only by defeating them will you prove your worth. The crowd fell silent as a figure stepped onto the stage. It was the young woman with sharp eyes whom Sung-min had seen with the leader earlier. She moved with a fluid grace, her every step radiating confidence and power. "I am Han Soo-jin," she declared, her voice steady and strong. "I will be your opponent." Sung-min's heart skipped a beat. Soo-jin was the daughter of General Han and an ally in his quest for the truth. But now she stood before him as an adversary. He couldn't afford to hold back, but he also didn't want to harm her. The match began, and Soo-jin attacked with a flurry of strikes. Sung-min parried and countered, his movements precise and controlled. The two fighters moved in a deadly dance, each testing the other's limits. Sung-min could feel the strain of the previous trials weighing on him, but he drew strength from his determination. He couldn't afford to lose now, not when he was so close to uncovering the truth. Soo-jin's attacks were relentless, but Sung-min's autumn wind sword style allowed him to flow around her strikes, turning her strength against her. He could see the respect in her eyes as they clashed, each recognizing the other's skill and resolve. In a moment of clarity, Sung-min saw an opening. He feinted to the right, drawing Soo-jin's guard, then pivoted and struck with a powerful downward slash. Soo-jin tried to parry, but she was a fraction too slow. Sung-min's sword connected with her shoulder, sending her sprawling to the ground. Chapter 8. The Truth Unveiled. The crowd erupted in cheers as Sung-min was declared the winner of the final trial. He quickly moved to help Soo-jin to her feet, their eyes meeting in a moment of silent understanding. Despite the circumstances, their alliance remained intact. The leader of the Phoenix Pavilion stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Kim Sung-min, you have passed all 3 trials. You have proven your skill, wisdom, and courage. As promised, you are now entitled to the prize, a rare martial arts manual and a position as an elder in the Phoenix Pavilion." Sung-min bowed respectfully, but his voice was firm when he spoke. "Thank you for this honor. However, before I accept, there is a matter I must address." A hush fell over the arena as Sung-min turned to face the crowd. "I am Kim Sung-min, last disciple of the Falling Leaf Sect. 3 years ago, my sect was destroyed, and I have come here seeking the truth behind that tragedy." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the audience. The leader's eyes narrowed, but he remained silent. Sung-min continued, his voice growing stronger. "I have reason to believe that the Phoenix Pavilion was involved in the destruction of my sect. I ask now, before all these witnesses, for an explanation." The tension in the arena was palpable. For a moment, it seemed as if the leader would deny everything. But then, a voice rang out from the stands. "I can provide that explanation." All eyes turned to see an elderly man making his way down to the stage. With a start, Sung-min recognized him as the mysterious figure he had encountered on his journey to the capital. The old man's eyes twinkled as he addressed the crowd. "I am Master Choi, former elder of the Phoenix Pavilion and keeper of its secrets." What young Sung-min says is true, but the full story is more complex than he knows. Master Choi turned to Sung-min. "The Falling Leaf Sect was indeed destroyed on orders from the Phoenix Pavilion, but not out of malice. Your master had discovered an ancient technique that could grant immense power, but at a terrible cost. He planned to use it to overthrow the martial world order, believing it was corrupt. Sungmin's mind reeled at this revelation. But why destroy the entire sect? Why not just confront my master? Your master was too powerful to be confronted directly, Master Choi explained. The Phoenix Pavilion believed that destroying the sect was the only way to prevent a catastrophe. But in our haste and fear, we made a grave mistake. We failed to see that not everyone in the Falling Leaf Sect shared your master's views. The leader of the Phoenix Pavilion stepped forward, his face etched with regret. Master Choi speaks the truth. We acted rashly, and innocent lives were lost. For that, we can only offer our deepest apologies and seek to make amends. Sungmin stood in stunned silence, trying to process this information. His quest for vengeance had led him to a truth far more complex than he had imagined. Soo-jin placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. What will you do now, Sungmin? He took a deep breath, centering himself. The past cannot be changed, but we can shape the future. I propose a new path forward. Let us use this moment to forge a new alliance, one that seeks to protect and nurture the martial world rather than control it. The crowd murmured in approval. The leader of the Phoenix Pavilion nodded slowly. Your wisdom belies your years, Kim Sungmin. We would be honored to work alongside you in this endeavor. Master Choi smiled. It seems the trials have chosen wisely. You have not only proven your skill and courage, but also your capacity for forgiveness and vision. The martial world will be in good hands with leaders like you. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the arena, Sungmin felt a weight lift from his shoulders. His journey had been long and difficult, but it had led him to this moment of understanding and reconciliation. The path of the wandering blade had come full circle. Now, a new chapter was beginning, one of healing, growth, and unity in the martial world. Chapter 9. A New Dawn. In the days that followed, the capital buzzed with excitement and anticipation. The revelation of the Phoenix Pavilion's past actions and the subsequent call for unity had sent shockwaves through the martial world. Many saw it as an opportunity for positive change, while others remained skeptical. Sungmin found himself at the center of these discussions, working tirelessly alongside Soo-jin, the Phoenix Pavilion leaders, and other influential figures to forge a new path forward. They established a council that would oversee the martial world, ensuring that no single sect or individual could wield unchecked power. The rare martial arts manual that had been promised as the tournament prize was revealed to contain not just techniques, but also wisdom on the ethical use of martial arts. Sungmin and the council decided to make copies of the manual available to all reputable sects, believing that shared knowledge would lead to greater understanding and cooperation. As weeks turned into months, Sungmin's role evolved. He became known not just as a skilled martial artist, but as a mediator and peacekeeper. His unique background, having experienced both the loss of his sect and the journey to forgiveness, gave him a perspective that many respected. One crisp autumn morning, Sungmin stood atop a hill overlooking the capital. The city was awash in the golden hues of falling leaves, reminding him of his sect's name and the techniques he had honed over the years. Soo-jin joined him, her presence a comforting constant in his new life. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. Sungmin smiled. "I was remembering something my master once told me. He said that like a falling leaf, a true martial artist must be able to adapt to changing winds, to flow with the currents of life rather than resist them." "Wise words," Soo-jin nodded. "And you've certainly embodied them." "I've been thinking about the future," Sungmin continued, "about how we can ensure that the mistakes of the past aren't repeated." Soo-jin's eyes lit up with interest. "What did you have in mind?" "I want to establish a school," Sungmin explained, his voice filled with passion. "Not just for martial arts, but for diplomacy, ethics, and leadership. A place where we can train the next generation to be not just skilled fighters, but wise and compassionate leaders." "That's a wonderful idea," Soo-jin beamed, "and I think I know just the place for it." Over the next year, Sungmin's vision became a reality. With the support of the council and the resources of the Han family, A new academy was built on the outskirts of the capital. They named it the Harmony of Five Elements Academy, symbolizing the balance and interconnectedness of all things. Students from all over the country flocked to the academy, eager to learn from Sungmin and the other masters who had joined his cause. The curriculum was diverse, combining physical training with philosophical study and practical leadership skills. As Sungmin watched the first class of students arrive, he felt a sense of pride and hope. Among them were orphans from destroyed sects, children of noble families, and even a few former rivals who had been inspired by the new spirit of cooperation. Master Kim, a young student, approached him, bowing respectfully. "I heard that you were once known as the Wandering Blade. Is it true that you single-handedly united the martial world?" Sungmin chuckled softly. "The story of the Wandering Blade is just that, a story. The truth is, no one person can unite the martial world. It takes the efforts of many, working together towards a common goal." He placed a hand on the student's shoulder. "Remember this, true strength lies not in conquering others, but in conquering oneself. And the greatest victory is not won on the battlefield, but in turning an enemy into a friend." As the student nodded earnestly and hurried off to join his classmates, Sungmin felt a familiar presence beside him. Master Choi, who had become a valued advisor and friend, smiled knowingly. "You've come a long way from that angry young man I met on the road," the old master said. "The path of the Wandering Blade has led you to a destination even I could not have foreseen." Sungmin bowed respectfully. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance, Master Choi, or without the support of so many others." "The journey is far from over," Master Choi reminded him. "There will always be challenges to face, conflicts to resolve, but I believe you have laid the foundation for a brighter future." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the academy grounds, Sungmin looked out at the students training in the courtyard. He saw in them the promise of a new era, one where the martial world would be guided by wisdom, compassion, and unity. The path of the Wandering Blade had indeed come to an end. But for Kim Sungmin, last disciple of the Falling Leaf Sect and founder of the Harmony of Five Elements Academy, a new journey was just beginning. And so, as the first stars appeared in the twilight sky, Sungmin stepped forward to greet the future, ready to face whatever challenges it might bring. For he knew that as long as there were those willing to walk the path of harmony and understanding, there would always be hope for the martial world. The end.